here at New Life, we talk a lot about expositional preaching, verse by verse. That's our typical standard here, is to go through a section of Scripture, even a book in the Bible, and just go verse by verse and try to understand how this applies to our lives. And so we're going to be doing that again today as we think about Romans chapter 8. And certainly when we look to the Bible, the reason that we come to the Bible and do an expositional teaching or preaching through the Bible is because we recognize we live in a fallen world. In fact, there are the three major narratives, or the three major themes throughout the Bible are the themes of creation, fall, and redemption. God created the world. There was a great fall that took place, and ever since the fall, God has been in process of redeeming the world. And Paul picks up on that very concept in Romans chapter 8. And we again just travel through this section, Romans chapter 8. Josh introduced Romans 8 to us last week, and there has been much that has been said about Romans chapter 8. The Welsh preacher Martin Lloyd-Jones wrote of Romans 8, "It is one of the brightest gems of all. Someone has said that in the whole of the Scriptures, the brightest and the most lustrous flashing stone, a collection of stones, is the epistle of Romans, and that these verses, Romans chapter 8, the verses that are before us, is the brightest gem in the cluster. The most moving chapter in Romans is Romans chapter 8. Many have said that Romans chapter 8 is perhaps the greatest chapter in all of the Bible. There have been many theologians that have claimed if they could only have one chapter from the Bible, they would take Romans chapter 8 because it is a masterpiece. And certainly we saw last week, beginning there in verse 1, that therefore there is now no condemnation. There's no condemnation. A great reminder, that idea of being condemned. There are many churches and many pastors that would get up and proclaim a teaching that would say, if you do something wrong, if you act a certain way, or if you sin, if you backslide, then you are no longer saved. It's over. And what Romans chapter 8 proclaims is that there's therefore now no condemnation. That once you have come into the grace of God through salvation, that there will therefore be no condemnation. There will be no added condemnation to you. That you are in right standing before God. Not based on what you have done, but based on what Christ has done. And so certainly Romans chapter 8 begins. It's very interesting how it begins, because Romans chapter 8 says there's therefore now no condemnation. And then verses 38 and 39 down at the bottom of chapter 8 says that there is therefore now no separation. That there's no condemnation for the believer. And there is no separation between God and those He has brought to salvation. So we can certainly celebrate that, and we can rejoice in that reminder.